Just make sure we're good. Okay.
Where to Hunt podcast. It's okay. It's okay.
Hi, I'm Dan Small, host of Outdoor Wisconsin, and I listen to Where to Hunt.
Meh, it's okay.
I'm Kurt Geyer with Working Class Bow Hunter. I listen to Where to Hunt podcast, and it's decent.
It's all right.
Hey, this is Bud Fisher with Catching Deers, and I think the Where to Hunt podcast is all right.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Where to Hunt podcast, the podcast that connects public land hunting enthusiasts, aka the okayest podcast in the Midwest. Today is Cinco de Mayo. Cheers to that. Happy May 5th. Greg, what's up?
Happy Cinco de Drinko.
Cinco de Drinko. 5 cans of mayonnaise. That'd be gross.
There would.
So I'm holding this bottle of tequila up to the camera. This is Don Julio number 70. I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna take a shot of it to kick things off and celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Greg, do you got like a Corona beer over there? Not the coronavirus?
No, I stepped it down. Well, in my opinion, I stepped it up a few notches. I'm drinking a red, white, and blue can, and I'll give you one guess as to what it is.
Ooh, I don't know. What could that be? I've just never heard. Is it Paul?
No, Pat.
Paul? Just kidding. PBR me ASAP. I'm drinking.
Blue Ribbon, man. Yeah,
It's good stuff. Have you ever tried the PBR Light? Did you know that's a thing?
It is a thing. I've heard that.
It's good.
But
it's
no,
really
I have
good.
not.
Before we get in,
keep my aspiring fat kid figure. I got to stick with what I've got.
yeah, round the shape. I'll roll you anywhere. That sounds weird.
Yeah, that's right.
Tequila hasn't even started yet. And I'm drinking this, what is this called? Mezcal, which is a agave. It's quoted by our guest who's hanging out in Mute Land right now. He'll be in a minute. He said this is the scotch of tequila. So how fitting is that? I got a little lime in here, which is delicious. So,
Yeah, the girl.
thanks, buddy. So before we get into it, let's hear what we got to say about our sponsors, the folks that help us do the show, that help, give us some of the supplies that we have, whether that's caffeine or other things. And in this case, when we're talking about caffeine, we're talking about Backwoods Grind. That's backwoodsgrind.com. Their website smells like coffee. I swear by it. Go check it out. I promise you will not be disappointed. And once you figure out which blend speaks to you the most and you decide to pull the trigger, enter in code W2H podcast and save 10%. It's really good stuff. They do have a sampler pack so you can kind of try a whole bunch for a low cost and kind of figure out what you want. So you don't have to go all in on a single bag, but I will recommend the Camp House.
Yes, Camp House and High Noon is a good one too.
Yeah. And what's the fire one? Fireside or that one's good too.
Fireside.
It's got
it's another nice roast.
Yeah, it's got a gritty flavor to it, but it's yummy. It's like the coffee you drink with your grandpa back in the day, if you could. And then our other sponsor, Gumleaf USA. Greg and I, we both have 2 pairs of Gumleaf boots, and they're rubber boots. They're 85% natural rubber, handmade from scratch over in, I think it's Italy, if I'm not mistaken. And they're imported here to the U.S. Is it not Italy? Where is it?
No.
Shut your mouth.
England, man.
Well,
England.
yeah, but there's a part of England. Which part of it?
You are geographically challenged in more ways than one.
I'm going to freaking figure this out. All right. And then whatever, Greg, you little a-hole. They're Vibram soles. We're going to find out who's right. And I'm probably wrong. So it's okay. I'm used to it. My wife's right about everything.
You are wrong.
Yeah. Totally dead wrong. Anyway.
Now I'm being compared to the wife. That's awesome.
Well, you kind of do, nag me and correct me. And if you want to save some money on Gumleaf boots, enter in code W2H2020 for 10% off their bigger ticket items. So that 10% goes a long way. We recommend their boots. They're really good. Yeah. And then, Greg, you've done such a
They're
great
great.
job with Vector Custom Shop. I want you to do it again.
You want me to do it? You want me to talk about Vector Custom Shop?
Mhm.
Arrows built to your spec? Is that the one you wanted me
That's
to
the
talk
one.
about?
Yeah. Yeah. The ones that are heavy.
Thick-walled, heavy carbon arrows. They sport the Ethics insert-outsert system up front. You can weight them anywhere from 45 to 175 grains. You can get a test pack, which is 2 different arrows or 2 like arrows of the same setup and weight if you want. Half dozen or a dozen. By going on vectorcustomshop.com, you can check all that out. And if you decide to order some, use discount code WHERETOHUNT, save 10%.
Cool. And we'll do the
How's
shot of
that?
the week later. Yeah, that's good. Let's bring our guest on. Sorry to keep you waiting so long,
Come on.
Aaron. On the line with us, we got Aaron Hitchins. I think I'm saying your last name correctly. Hopefully I didn't mess that one up.
That is correct.
What's up, man? You're with Rockhouse Motion, and we're excited to have you.
Well, I'm happy. I'm disappointed you're not drinking a red, white, and blue Molson, but other than that, seems like we're off to a good start.
I think you just gave the audience
right.
a hint where you're from. Where are you from? Let's have you tell some folks.
I am from the land just slightly to the north of you guys. I grew up in Ontario, Canada. I currently live in British Columbia, Canada, and I have spent the last while in Alberta, and we're actually building a house there. So once we get through this hunting season in BC, we'll be headed back to Alberta. But right now, generally a Western Canadian, even though I'm of an Eastern origin.
Fun. How what's the terrain like up there? Is it pretty similar to, like, you know, the Midwest, Wisconsin? And there's not, like, tell me a little bit more about that.
No. Wisconsin
No.
is a very beautiful place, and in some ways it's slightly reminiscent of where I grew up. A little bit more tame, but yeah, where I live right now is right on the coast of the Pacific Ocean. So
Yeah, that sounds
it's essentially
way better.
deep blue water and snow-capped mountains and like sort of big fjords and
You're even saying
wild
cooler words
salmon.
than us. A fjord? God dang it. We got to go to Canada, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, technically it's a fjord. They call it a sound here, but according to something I read online one time, it's actually a fjord. So it's it's very green, lots of big trees.
That's cool.
General
Yeah.
Canadian stuff.
It sounds beautiful. It sounds like, so, okay. I'll just back up and just quickly tell people, like, why or how we come in contact with you. I have not been moved by something in years, more than the video Rockhouse had made, the Student of the Wild, right? And because of that, I'm just so drawn to much bigger things now, which is why the elk hunting trip that Greg and I are potentially planning for 2021 is going to become a reality. I've said it out loud, so I have to do it. But that video is so damn incredible. And now you're telling me about, you know, where you're from, and I'm just really envious or jealous. I'm saddened by the look out my window right now, in contrast to what you just described.
Man, I mean, I wouldn't be saddened. First of all, I appreciate that those words about the film, and that's kind of exactly what we set out to do. We tried to create something that would relate with people all over, regardless what it is or where you live outdoors. Hopefully if you watch that and you like to hunt or fish or be outside, there'll be at least a handful of clips that connect with your exact experience, and then hopefully a handful more that inspire you to do something else. So if we had anything to do with you guys spending some time together outside, we'll count it as a win. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Wisconsin. So it's different than here, but it's a pretty great spot to be for a sportsman.
That's cool. That's I think we just lost Greg, by the way. I think he just texted me. He'll call back in, but we do have a caller actually. So that's we're gonna bring him in. I think it's Sam Soholt, but I'm not positive. Let's see. I know I said I would do that later in the show. I think. Hey, Sam, is that you? Are you on the show? Are you live right now?
Yeah, that's me. Did I call in too early?
No, it's okay. We'll make room. I thought the voice transcription that I have, it just totally botches every time. So it says that you are Soholt, not Sam Soholt. So I had to put 2 and 2 together there.
Good.
The one and only
Well,
Sam Soholt.
Yep. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, you are a first-time caller, but you've been on the show before. So how about that?
I have. Yeah. I
See?
have been on the show. I just haven't called in before.
No stranger. Does it feel weird?
It feels different. But it's good. I'm happy to be on right now.
Well, happy Cinco de Mayo. I mean, are you
Yeah.
guys friends? Do you guys know each other? Because you guys run in similar circles, and you both have amazing work.
We've never met.
Outlet.
Never met. I'm kidding. We're good friends.
Nice. You had me
Yeah,
fooled.
I'm quite fortunate to count myself as the in the inner circle of, at least I think, of Mr. Sam Soholt, along with Joe Rogan, and I'm not sure who all else. But yeah, no, Sam's a good buddy and does, like you say, he does great work and does it for a good cause too. So it's been pretty impressive seeing the momentum he's been able to get around protecting public lands and making school buses great again.
So who is the who taught who?
I will keep my call short. I honestly just wanted to call and say that that Rockhouse has been a huge inspiration for me over the years,
Cool.
Dating back to 2012. Started following those guys and have just looked up to them in the category of both video and photography, and I think that they collectively have probably, inspired more videographers and photographers than anybody else in the business.
Wow, that's a big statement, especially coming from you, man. That's awesome.
Very kind.
Holy
Yeah,
cow.
Yeah,
No,
Sam and I have had the.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Who wants to go? It's an awkward thing. We have this many people on the call. It's all right. It happens all the time.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I'd say that Sam and I have had the pleasure of being on a couple shoots together, and it's been fun. But there'll be more to come on that for sure.
Rock on.
Keep taking it to the plug. We actually hunted together in Maryland doing a shoot for Beretta, and yeah, Sam makes things quite a bit more fun, and uses quite a bit more ammo than the average participant.
Is that saying
But
he's
the
a bad
great
shot?
effect, I will say.
Hopefully not.
Hey, when you're in a blind with 4 cases of ammo and plenty of waterfowl flying around, you just got to do what needs to be done.
Let her rip.
And
You
that
had
is
to
take it
tackle-
to the plug.
You probably had to test the cycle rate of that firearm. That's my guess.
That's right. That's right.
It passed the test. there were like 700 empty shotgun holes that proved that was absolutely the case.
Well,
That's
I
awesome.
have 300 more to go.
Sam, thanks
I'll
for
let you
calling,
guys
man.
get back to the podcast.
Hell
but,
yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to listening to the rest of it.
Appreciate it. Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Sam.
All right. See ya.
See, this is the fun part about doing a live show where you can take calls. It's why we don't do show notes, because it doesn't matter what we write down on paper. It'll just get totally blown to the wind anyways. So that's how we roll.
It's fun. Sam's a pretty impressive guy. It's cool that you guys have had him on, and he's done some awesome work and really moved the needle around some important causes. And he's just a super solid dude and very good hunter. So
Yeah, in terms of
becoming bigger friends, and that was a heck of a compliment he paid there. So
That's
I probably owe him one.
well, that's awesome. I mean, we're talking about student of the wild. He's saying he's a student of Rockhouse. At least he looks up to you guys in that sense. But why don't you let's maybe start with talking about, like, how did you get into hunting? Where are you doing your hunting? And what do you like to hunt? All that kind of stuff. And we'll just kind of take it from there and let it roll.
Yeah, so I grew up in Ontario, northwest of Ottawa, in an area that we fondly refer to as the Valley. Grew up on a lake and did a lot of hunting and fishing there. We were able to duck hunt on our lake, so after school I could go out in a boat and hunt the marsh across the lake, come back, and it wasn't too disruptive. Started deer hunting like everybody else in the region. We have an amazing whitetail hunting culture. Very, very poor hunting as it relates to the rest of the world, but an amazing culture around it. And so, I mean, above anything else, I'm a very obsessive person. And hunting was kind of what has grabbed and has held my attention over the years. And so, yeah, I mean, predominantly waterfowl, turkeys, and whitetails growing up in Ontario. And then I lived in Kansas for a while, did a lot of waterfowl hunting there, did a lot of whitetail hunting there, which is significantly different from the Northwoods where I grew up because there's lots of deer and they're very big. And then moved back to Canada, but headed west to Alberta, and have spent, I guess, the last 3 or 4 seasons hunting there, and then out of state trips or out of province trips whenever I can. So I've helped out on hunts in Colorado. I generally get to Arkansas with some good friends every year for waterfowl. I try and hunt Kansas whitetails, and hunted Montana for elk last year, and just try and cruise around and experience everywhere that I can, and just enjoy the journey that hunting takes me on.
That's pretty cool. And are you doing a lot of that stuff on your own time, or is some of that through Rockhouse, or what does that look like?
It's a blend. Over the years, things have sort of changed. For a while, we were almost always filming hunts, but it's difficult whenever you work in a category that you really profoundly love, because there's inherently a little bit of a shift that happens when you do something and you're working. There's a responsibility and an approach that it doesn't necessarily take you out of it, but you see it differently. So what we've worked to do is create relationships with companies where we're telling stories and building content, and I don't necessarily love that word, but filling memory cards and also hunting on our own, or at least with people that we would sort of choose to be with. So I guess it's never really one or the other. Like, it's very rare that I hunt purely for, without a camera, but it's also rare at this point that we go somewhere in hunting season, especially in the prime time, I guess, especially as it pertains to the elk and whitetail rut, whenever we're doing something purely for work reasons. We do still shoot quite a bit, kind of all over the continent in hunting season for brands or for different projects here and there. But we try and, whenever it's prime, we try and get with people we love and go on, adventures with the goddamn boys and girls, for that matter. We have a pretty broad group of people that we hunt with, and I spend a lot of that time with my fiance in the woods. So
that's cool.
It's been really good.
I mean, you talk about creating content, and if you're doing that stuff for the outdoor industry, so to speak, then you have to capture content that is going to speak to that audience. You almost kind of have to partake in the activities that, are going to resonate with them to get that stuff documented, so you have some fodder to use and create from. Do you have any favorite places you've been to that stand out most so far, or any animals that you've really been drawn to? You said you grew up hunting waterfowl and turkeys, and you've done some whitetail hunting down here in the States. What is that? How has that changed for you now that you've done some Western hunts and things like that? What's that journey been like?
Yeah, that's really an interesting question, right? Because there's a lot of recency bias around it. Like, being in Canada, we have such great fortune with being able to access different species in a lot more easily than some of our southern brethren. So, I've been able to sheep hunt a decent bit. I actually hunted with a friend, sort of photographing that in the Yukon last year, and that was just spectacular. The bonnet plume area is so rugged and so wild, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So that would be a place. There's some spots in Colorado that I'll remain nameless that I've built quite an affinity towards, and just because of the population density, the elk there is so fun. And I kind of think that my favorite place is the next one. I really like to explore and understand a new sort of herd of animals and a new place. And the Wilmore in Alberta is beautiful, but really I think that if you have the right attitude and you're approaching things the way that I think a good hunter should, you can kind of find the beauty and interest in every one of these locations and species. But when it comes to species, I would probably say sheep are my favorite because of the location and the challenge. It's like a really good way to remember that to remember what you're made of. and to see what you have in the tank. And so I love it for that very type 2 kind of approach. But elk hunting for me is probably most aligned with the things that I love about hunting. So if I had to only do one, it would be elk.
Damn it. I wish you would have said that. I know I'm leading into a place that I'm going to get stuck for life, which is beautiful, but it'll be a problem, a good problem. I'm not shocked that that's what you'd said. I've been hearing it from everybody. Oh, that's good. You mentioned a couple things in that, and, in the spirit of everything that's going on right now, talking about, what you're made out of, and, the grit and some of these places that you have to show how much you have in the tank. How did you kind of get to where you are? We heard Sam Soholt's story when we had him on the show, and it was pretty incredible how one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. And it was a lot of that, momentum that created opportunities. He was good at capitalizing on those, but how did you kind of end up where you're at? Because outside of hunting, are you behind the lens? Are you business development? Like, what are you doing in that space? And like, how did you get to where you are? Because, the places you've been, man, are beautiful.
Yeah. And that's a very, it's a long story, but it's also, I think I can sum it up fairly succinctly. Like, as far as what I do, it's a blend of being behind the lens, being behind the keyboard, writing and concepting and scripting and kind of interpreting brands' messaging and figuring out a way to bring that to life in something that's attention grabbing and it's beautiful and relatable and authentic. Like you mentioned, you really have to understand it to excel at it. But I think if we go back, I had never really planned on doing this. I just knew that I had confidence in myself to succeed at whatever it was I did decide to do whenever I found that thing. And essentially, I finished university and then moved to Kansas to guide waterfowl. And I met my now business partners on they were shooting for Sitka at the time, and I was guiding, and very quickly identified that they had an awesome thing going. It was in its relative infancy, but it was pretty clear that they were, talented, motivated people that shared, definitely shared my passion and also had a great deal of talent and motivation. And so essentially, doors opened and sometimes we had to kick them down and sometimes they opened for us. But no matter what, we always walked through and we always took advantage of every opportunity that popped up in front of us or that we created. And we just always retained a focus on, doing the best possible work. And that changes, right? The best thing is always fluid. It is different in every situation with every client, every trip or every project. And we're just pretty lucky to be able to work in a world that we care so much about and to have the power to make work that, like you said at the start of the show, really connects with people. So I think it's almost an attitude thing and expectations of yourself. You always want to make sure that your next piece is better than the last and that you don't leave anything on the bone. And that's kind of what we've done, I guess, to try and be succinct about it, because it's a bit of a winding road.
You definitely, going back to the Student of the Wild video, when you say don't leave anything on the bone, I don't think you did. And if it was meant to be there intentionally, and you did a good job of deliberately doing that. If that was the case, like the soundtrack, I think was made just for that. If I'm not mistaken, the narration, yep. I'm not sure which came first, the narration or the footage, but it was in succinct perfectly. I mean, even the way the sound effects hit, and the way certain, scenes transition where he's tossing up the climbing stick. And then the next scene is the deer popping up out of the grass, or the guy climbing on the ridgetop and the rocks tumbling down to the camera. I haven't seen anything put together that well before, I don't think, to be quite honest. And I don't mean to belabor this thing here, but in this time of COVID and stay at home and, some of the mental anguish that people are going through, especially someone like myself as an extrovert who thrives on connectivity and being out, the connection to nature, I don't think has ever been more important. And your video was like the kickoff to the last 8 weeks that we've been enduring. At least for me, it's been 8 weeks of working from home remote. in isolation, basically, from the people that I love to work with. And that's the part of the job that I love. And without that, it's kind of just, it's just work. Your video was very inspirational in that sense. So I almost wonder, like, how did you guys were you just sitting on this mountain of all this sawdust of B-roll footage, and you decided, we need to do something? Or how did it kind of come about? I know it's a loaded question. I ask like 20 questions when I do this, but I think you get the idea.
No, I think the how to come about question is one that we can work from for sure. And again, I really appreciate the kind words around that, because that was a project we didn't do for any clients. We didn't really shop it as far as having somebody else.
Well, then they didn't dictate it either, which is probably good, right?
Pardon me?
Then they didn't dictate it either, which isn't the worst thing.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the challenge of adapting things to other, to the sort of a brand's identity, and I think that's something that differentiates our work. Is we try and lead with what the client or the brand or whoever the entity is we're working with. We try and lead with their perspective and adapt the creative to that. But in this case, we had our own perspective and we had our own footage, and it was really great. It actually started with the script. I wish I could remember exactly where or when I wrote it, but I remember it was a pretty low moment somewhere in the mountains when I was getting my ass kicked and things weren't going well, and you're walking back to camp, and the thing is you're in this sort of physical discomfort and kind of this mental defeat. But I think the kind of overpowering thing about, at least the way that I see the world, is I'm just so fortunate, and we're as sportsmen are so fortunate to care so much about something, that we put ourselves through the things that we do in the vague hope that we'll be successful. And so I wrote that at the time and kind of sat on it for maybe a couple of years, year and a half. And we have an outrageous asset base of footage that spans, hunting and fishing and all over the world over many, many years. And so we wrote the piece, and then we worked with a local artist to score the song, and then just kind of dug in and tried to find sort of the best shots in each category, so that regardless what it is that you like to do, hopefully there's something there that connects to you. And we tried to find some of the grittiest moments and some of the happiest ones and the most beautiful ones, and really pull it all together into something that hopefully help people, to exactly to your point, help them celebrate the outdoors and to be outside. But we just, if anything, we just want it to inspire people to go out and do more and reflect on how fortunate they are to really care about and love something to the extent where they they can push themselves and their gear and their physical being and their mental being to the extent that we do to be successful. Because it's, win or lose, it's always good to come back, beaten and tired and everything else, and know that you gave your all, right? I think that's a very rare feeling for human beings, and it's something that's much less rare for us in the fall, and we're pretty grateful for that.
Damn, dude. Yeah. What is well put. What has the response been like, other than folks like me reaching out and saying, "Hey, do you want to be on a podcast?" What have you heard from folks? It reached a lot of people, didn't it? Like, how many people did it reach? Do you know what the numbers are?
I haven't checked the numbers lately. Probably, somewhere it'll sort of grow. We're really fortunate to have a lot of great friends in the industry who shared it, like Sam, or just key people in different categories that we really respect. So it's been nice to have them on board with sharing it. But yeah, I think the thing is that one of the things that I'm most proud of is that some people reach out and say, "Man, this is how I've always felt. I've just never known how to say it," and that's cool. Being able to help people understand something that's kind of like this mysterious motivation that they have, and share that with the people they love. And then just, a lot of people saying, "Man, this has sort of pushed me over the edge to go and plan something or do something or get out there." And, it's everybody that reaches out. It's actually really meaningful to us, because one of the strange things about making film is if you're in a you're a rock star or something, you play a concert and there's all kinds of screaming fans, and they like it because they're there. But for us, it's so decentralized that some people might like this and watch it and never say anything, and so we don't really know. It's a number on the view count, but cat videos get 4 million views in a day, so in the grand scheme of things, our viewership numbers are sort of hard to go by. But we really value the impact that the work that we do can have, more so than the volume of people that see it. And so when people reach out and say things like they have, and like you guys did, and it really does mean a lot.
Well, the impact is pretty major. I mean, quite honestly, it's effectively changing the course of my life right now. I'm not someone that's easily inspired. I usually, as a marketer, I can see how all that stuff, I know how the sausage is made. So it's rare that something will come across my screen that I'm going to take the time to watch. And the reason that I even took the time to watch is because it was so loud from all of these people in the industry. I'm like, okay, I guess I need to watch this because everyone's watching it. What is this all about? And it gripped me immediately, and then the message was so powerful. I mean, the fact, so you wrote that yourself a couple years ago? That's crazy. You've articulated it so well. I mean, Greg, what are your thoughts? I'm just going crazy here, like I thought I would. And I want to make sure I give Greg the air to ask questions he has too. It's hard when he's not physically here with me to do these shows.
Well, no, I don't really have too many questions. Very inspirational piece. We can sit here and blow at you and tell you how great you are because you are so good. And I enjoyed it. And Eric, I think you're the one that told me, dude, you got to watch this. And I don't know how many people's feed that I follow on social that had put this out there. So I watched part of it, I think, and then I got interrupted, and then I went back and watched the whole thing again after you had said something, Eric. And just the footage is stellar. The narration's awesome. The music, everything's perfect with it. Very, very inspirational for anybody who isn't going out and doing something. This should get them off their ass and get them out there doing it. Wanting to see the vistas, get the views, see the animals, and yeah.
Well, the connection with nature is incredible. When you talk about it as a student of the wild and you're treating it that way as a teacher, I mean, that's how I grew up. That's what did it for me. That's why I probably resonated with me so much. Is I didn't have certain things growing up, and that was my release in a major way. I mean, it shaped me quite a bit. And those silent moments that you talked about, those are the big ones for me. But then the adventurous ones where you're pushing yourself, you get to measure yourself almost in some of these moments and see what you're truly made of. I mean, you're not trying to put a ball in an end zone or in a hoop or in a hole on a green. It's just you and the whatever, the wind, the hill, the waves. And when you kind of push yourself against that, that's a real measure, I think. And, that's why hunting is so valuable. When you're doing things like that in wild places, even if it's a swamp here in Wisconsin or a mountain in Colorado or the ocean over where you're at, it doesn't matter when you're connecting that way. It's more indelible. Those memories, you're creating memories that are going to solder themselves into your brain forever. You never remember the video game you played on the couch. You never remember the moment where you headshotted someone. It doesn't matter. That's like on a screen. It's not going to leave a mark. But these other moments in the outdoors, when you're chasing whitetail elk and you're embarking on a new adventure, you'd said the best place you've been is the one you're going. It's because it's this uncertainty that you're framing out and creating this new space in your mind for. Those are the moments that I live for. I never take any chance I can get off the beaten trail. I always say, like, don't follow me because I'm going to take you to a place, like, it's not going to be fun or pretty. We're going to get in some weird shit. And that's the fun of it for me. I can't tell how many times I've gotten stuck in a tamarack swamp or something weird, or climbed some hill or face that I shouldn't have, or jumped into some water that was too cold to jump into. And, but I'll never forget any of those things. That's the value of it.
Yeah. And I think that, well, again, I really appreciate all that, and it just comes down to, the reason that the key line as a student of the wild is because it all comes down to I think success is very closely tied to curiosity and asking the right questions and understanding that when you get the answer to that question, there will just be 3 more questions, and just embracing that and seeing where it takes you.
Oh yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's sure. That's pretty crucial.
Greg's right. We can keep blowing this stuff
Were there
all
any
day.
thoughts or
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Were
No.
there any moments from the piece that specifically stood out or connected with you guys?
I mean, man, I feel like I just listed a bunch of them. I paid special attention and detail to just how it was done, and I tried to like experience it rather than watch it. It really kind of took over for the 2 minutes that it ran, and the silent moment parts where people are in the woods bow hunting, and you take a minute to slow. This is a fast paced world. Everything's immediate. We want everything right now or as quickly as possible.
You had a lot of slow motion shots there, like the honeybee hovering. I don't know. I like seeing the slow motion stuff. I think it's cool, but it takes a lot of time to develop all that stuff. I'm sure, setting the camera right, and then you probably even slowing it down more so in a computer program. What kind of education did you end up going through to learn how to do all this? I guess that's a question that's kind of deviating us.
Yeah, I actually went to school for conservation biology and business.
Okay.
Everything that we've done technically, so first thing, like my business partner, Matt White, is an absolute technical genius. So I get to focus on the big picture stuff. He gets to focus on the nuance of how to execute it. So, what cameras and lenses and, monitors and everything else, computers we need to run it, color grading, everything. He's brilliant in that regard. But all of us have a pretty high level of technical competency, and frankly, it's all on YouTube, it's all on blogs, tutorials. It's a very sort of democratized learning environment where if you want to know, you can generally find out. And there's so much expertise shared in that way that we've been able to access a lot of that and learn a lot of that. And frankly, as it pertains to this, we're essentially, our entire team is self-taught and continue to try and, leverage the opportunities we have to get better at everything sort of constantly. So
Sure.
I wish I had the ability to from a schooling standpoint.
Oh, I think that's pretty cool. You have a way of furthering your education all the time. I'm in the trades, plumbing, heating, and I work for a company now that I'm in a position where I get to help people further their education on product or how to install it or whatever. So, but like you said, YouTube is a pretty big thing, and I don't know, I read something somewhere that stupid people watch YouTube videos. Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, we're kind of dumb. We're trying to learn something. So, no excuse.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube, right? I think that's a pretty absurd comment. But,
it is. We do have.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what you choose to do.
Let's say we do have a couple callers in the queue. I'll bring them in. I think it's a good time to maybe open up some questions before we get to the most memorable hunt. But we'll bring on Anthony Heller out of Madison. You're live on the show. How you doing, Anthony?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for taking my call, guys.
Absolutely, man. You do a bunch of videography stuff, and you help us out on the show with the tip of the week. So thanks for calling in.
Yeah, you bet. And I do a lot, but I don't do nearly what Aaron does. Yeah, my question that I was wondering is, when Aaron, when you guys go to, I just recently watched your early riser film, which is pretty awesome. And when you guys go to put something like that together, how much of the storyboard would you say is baked before you even get on site versus just kind of after the fact? You're like, all right, we got all this footage. What are we going to do with it?
That's a really good question, and it really varies. I know that's probably not what you want to hear.
No, that's fine.
For the most part, a lot of it is predetermined. In some cases, we literally will have every single shot. We have a Cabela's brand anthem that we've posted semi-recently, that, every single shot is drawn out beforehand. We talk about where the shot starts, where it ends, and we sort of script everything within it. Other times, like Student of the Wild, you have a message and you have a ton of footage and you find the pieces that go with it. I think that the Early Riser film is probably right in the middle. The reality with hunting and fishing is that a lot of things, when it's live action, you really can't script it. But what we do is we set a list of kind of the must-haves, which is what you sort of see in the front end of that film. What we really knew with that is we wanted to set out to make people understand what it feels like to catch these fish. The reality with tarpon is they're in a small geographic region. They're very challenging to catch, but they are absolutely awesome. And so we wanted to kind of communicate the experience and kind of the feeling that goes with that. And so what we did is we sort of knew the things we needed to get as far as the run of show in regards to how the day goes and what some of the key moments are that build energy. And we hoped that we would get a fish. And when we got a fish, we had sort of 3 shots we wanted to get that were really key. We wanted to get the vertical jump shot. We wanted to get the jump with the angler in the background. And we wanted to get a shot of the tarpon eating, which was like kind of a Mission Impossible thing. But we ended up checking off all 3. And, that is obviously largely based on good fortune, but also working with a great angler. And just thinking, if things go well, what's it going to look like? If they go okay, what's that going to look like? And understanding once you have the things you need, to what extent you can kind of go for broke and try and get the best possible thing. Because if we didn't have sort of some backup stuff, we may never have gotten those shots. But since we were able to catch 3 or 4 fish during the day, by the time we caught the fish that we used in the film, we were able to really hyper focus on kind of best case scenario, and somehow it all worked out.
Good question, Anthony. Great answer.
That's awesome. No, I really appreciate that insight. Makes a lot of sense.
Rock
I
on.
think, yeah, the thing is you want to make sure that you have a clear vision for what it is you're trying to accomplish, because if you don't, you're going to go shoot everything and you're going to be at home trying to make a piece of work that's different than the last thing you did. But the thought process and the way that you approached it was the same. So unless the environment is drastically different or you have some unique event, it's not going to be, it's going to look fairly similar. So just kind of think about whatever it is that you're doing and the spirit of it and the people you're with. And even if it's just understanding the energy or the focus, you're going to change the way that you view things and shoot things. And that'll put you in a much better position when it comes time to edit. But it's not all about drawing out the storyboards, but that can be a really worthwhile investment if you're doing something super specific or working with a large team where you're not going to always be on the camera.
Yeah. No, yeah. That makes total sense. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the call, Anthony.
Anytime.
Yeah, you bet. I'll enjoy the rest of the
All
podcast.
right, sounds good, buddy. Bye.
All right, see ya.
I'd have to say that that's really incredible advice, considering you mentioned it's live action. So it's how do you storyboard something if you don't know what's going to happen? But you actually articulated the answer really well. I'm actually happy to have heard that because I struggled with that in the past. We're going to bring on another caller real quick. We got Zach out of Appleton, Wisconsin. He's called in before. Zach, you're live on the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Happy to have you.
So first of all, great question by the previous dude. That's actually something I was going to ask as well, but I also just wanted to say to Aaron, great work on Student of the Wild. That is one. I'm kind of similar to Eric. I work in the marketing world and I actually do photography and videography for a living too, so I'm not easily impressed, and that was one that I sent to everyone I know. And in the photo and video world that I work in, it's in kind of a different environment. It's not in the outdoor industry, and I always have a hard time articulating it to the team that I work with because I feel like they don't get it. And I just sent it to our group chat and said, listen, this guy did a way better job encapsulating what I feel than I could ever do. And that was really awesome. So thank you for that. That was such an inspiring film.
Thanks. Those are super kind words, and I love that. Hopefully you swayed an opinion or two with that, being able to share that along.
Yeah, for sure. But my biggest question is, so I am for my day job, I'm in the photo and video world, and I'm doing stuff like that every day, and I feel like I'm getting better and better. But I also I like to film my own outdoor experiences and stuff like that. And one of the biggest frustrations I run into is I can never get the quality that I'm looking for, being that I'm, both the hunter, the subject, and the videographer, the subject and the photographer. And I've run into a lot of frustration of never being able to get the quality that I want in that way. And obviously I love hunting. That's why I do all this, but I want to take my photo and video game to the next game in the hunting world. I guess I'm just wondering what your recommendations would be for someone that, does photography and videography for a living, but isn't quite happy with the industry they do it in. How would you look at getting more into the outdoor industry and expanding on your skills that way?
That's a good question. There's a few parts to that. So first off, when you say quality, what do you mean? Is that like image quality or story, or what is that specifically?
So a little bit like, especially in the video world, a lot of my videos tend to end up being kind of like that vlog style, just because it's really easy for me to produce and it's a really fast turnaround. And like I said, because I'm self-filming, it's much easier for me to just, as I'm going, hold my camera out, flip it around and face it towards me, rather than get, set up dynamic lighting and get everything all set. I kind of just, it looks like a vlog rather than a film.
Yeah, so I think that the thing with that is maybe one of the things that I tell people is, like, think about when you go out and you're in the truck in the morning driving there and you're like, man, I can't wait for the sun to come up, or to hear the birds, or to, ideally see and shoot a giant deer, but like, what are the things along the way that you really connect with? Maybe it's a little creek you always jump over, or anything like that. And try and identify the points along the way that make the experience important to you, that you really connect with, and that inspire you beyond kind of the broader hope of hunting success, and dive into the details of what are the things that make the outdoor experience so rich, and then shoot that. You don't always have to be in the shot. A lot of the times it makes it more difficult to make a compelling image with a person in it. So if you can just sort of think of what those environmental things are and focus on them, and then try and think about, how do you hunt, or how do you enjoy your time outside that might be different, or what do you think is a perspective that you can bring that isn't necessarily being brought? And again, with the way that you speak and storytell and everything else, but also the way you capture imagery, try and reflect that. As far as succeeding in a different industry, the same truths are always going to apply, right? You need to create good work efficiently, and so that means you need to be fast, and you need to have an established process, and you need to be able to adapt your process or your look or your language or whatever to the people that you work with. It's very, very rare in today's world to be like a transcendent individual person that a brand's just like, hey, do whatever you want, and we'll put our logo at the end of it. That doesn't necessarily really ever happen, especially in this category. So the stuff that you're doing every day is probably great, right? Develop an understanding of lighting, develop an understanding of different lenses, what that makes you feel, camera movement, when to move a camera, when to control it, and just try and think about not just the mechanics of making all of those things happen and look good, but also how does it make you feel when something's done a certain way? How do you make people feel uncomfortable or anxious or tense, or the opposite, relaxed and enthralled? And I think another really key piece is thinking of it beyond just the visuals, and also, from a sound signature standpoint, whether that's sound design or music, paying attention to those things as well, because whenever you put a finished body of work together, the images are just a part of it. And that's kind of the beauty of film, is that you're kind of appealing to people in all these different senses, and just see where you can leverage those different senses to tell a more robust story. But I would not be discouraged by the fact that you don't work specifically in the outdoors. I think some of the best shooters are developed in other places, and frankly, some of the best work is done by people that have to do it. If you go to work and you have to make great imagery, tell a great story in a confined environment when you don't have to rely on some great natural phenomenon to do it, you're probably better equipped to do a better job capturing it when you do have that in the outdoors. So being able to create sort of under pressure and on a timeline is really a huge asset that will differentiate you if you start doing commercial work in our category.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. That was great advice.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much.
Good question.
Good question, Zach. Appreciate it. Happy Cinco de Mayo, man. Go take a shot at tequila or something.
I'm drinking Coronas right now.
All right. We'll catch you later, man.
All these Scotty boys getting cultured. I like it.
It's good stuff. I think, man, it's very apparent. I'm happy to have you as a guest. We might have to have you back because this is a topic we've touched on before. We've had some of the guys from Chase Nation on. We've had Sam on, a few others, Anthony too. But a lot of these guys are doing the self-filming stuff, and it is a challenge. You want to capture the heat of the moment. It seems like that's the focal point. There's a videographer I followed a long time ago, and I think he's changed quite a bit since then. I think back in like 2012, 13, 14-ish, I used to consume a lot of YouTube content from a guy named Devin Supertramp. And as a videographer, I don't know if you know who that is, if you've seen his work.
I do not offhand.
He would focus on, first of all, he shot great work. It was really cool. Like, I think I found him because I was Googling cliff jumping because that was something I was into for some time. And I found some of his videos. I was like, oh, cool. And I just started checking out his channel. He had all sorts of fun stuff like bikes going off jumps into ponds and weird stuff like that. But he would focus the very beginning of the video on audio only. So you'd hear like a really rich format of just the audio. You'd still see the imagery happening, but there'd be a focus on the audio and the specific sound effects. So in this example of like a bike going into a pond off this big jump, it was like you hear the sprocket clicking, and then you hear the tires on the dirt, and it hits the ramp, and there's this plank, and then as soon as it hits water, boom, the beat drops, the music kicks in, everyone's having a good time. But that focus on some of these sounds very early on, I think that's how you guys on the Student of the Wild video captivated me, was that similar style where it was like, the ducks and then the elk, and there was just this, the bees buzzing. There's this rich sound first, and when you're in nature, that's one of the senses that gets heightened, I think, more than anything, especially when it's dark out. All you can really do is listen.
That's one of the funny things about web video too, is that you only have so much time to hook people.
Mm-hmm.
So like, ideally, I really love that segment, but like we wouldn't necessarily have needed it. But because you have such short online attention span, we wanted to lead with something that was very sort of diverse and curious, right? Like, we didn't want to show all our cards. You go from bumblebees to orcas to wild turkeys and pheasant flushing and everything else. So like, we kind of wanted to throw people a change up and just make sure it was like kind of rich and immersive, and go from there. So yeah, I think sound it's an absolutely crucial element, and it's such an art to get it right, to make it sound authentic, but also to be engaging, because a lot of that stuff, what does a bumblebee sound like? Well, but what does a bumblebee sound like at 1,000 frames a second?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's
a
cool.
Totally different ballgame.
Well, you mentioned
So you kind of have to time the wing beats to the wing flaps and everything else. So it's a little different world.
You mentioned to our last caller, Zach, like focus on some of the things like you pay attention to on your way out, whether it's hopping a creek or what have you. And one of the things that stood out to me, I used to hunt the Northwoods in the Nicolet National Forest. It was dead, barren, freezing cold land. It was lifeless by and large. And then you get this flock of life come through. What are those tiny, tiny little birds? They're like, wild finches or something. Me. They come through, they land on the tree. And it was my favorite part of hunting, I think, was seeing these tiny little finches come through, pick at the bark, come through. You hear the little wings going from one tree to the next, and then their little calls, me, and then they're gone. But it was this flicker of life in this barren, cold, desolate place. And it was like, wow. And then I'd look down, and sure enough, there'd be a field mouse, and you could hear him scurrying around on the leaves. And those are the silent moments when I think about when you stop to slow down, let nature come to life around you, that you normally don't pay attention to that stuff. But that's a moment that, like, if I had a camera in hand and a good mic, that's something that I would want to capture because that's an important moment to me.
Yeah, the challenge is a lot of, like, almost that stuff's almost impossible to record, so you kind of have to recreate it in studio afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like taking that memory and then rebuilding it with sound design, and that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those are called snow buntings, those specific birds you're talking about.
Oh,
I
cool.
totally know what you mean.
Yeah, Greg's my go-to guy for these types of things. He knows all of these answers.
I don't know everything.
You know quite a bit, dude. I bet you know what birds those are too, you son of a bitch.
Well, they could be chickadees. You know, you'll hear them for miles. Though it seems like, especially when the woods is quiet, they'll be hopping branch to branch and singing their song, and you'll hear their wing beats, and they'll land in the branches right above you, or they'll land on your arrow when it's knocked in your bow, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see that. Or you hear a flock of wood ducks fly over, and you know a flock of wood ducks when you hear them because they have a distinct sound, and it's usually a half dozen or more. So you hear them flying over. There's a lot of cool stuff to experience just going out deer hunting or even for a walk in the woods to scout.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we pumped out the call queue for now, but I think we're getting close to time, but I think we're good. And at this point, I'd love to hear if we've planted the seed appropriately before we hit the record button. If you're a memorable hunt has kind of come to top of mind, if you'd want to share that with us, we'd love to hear it. Especially coming from you, man, with all of your experiences. Yeah. I'm kind of excited about it.
Well, it's a tough question because I get to hunt a lot, and I get to hunt with some really great people and in some wild places. But I think that probably my most memorable hunt, it would be a toss-up. Have you guys seen the film Beyond the Roar that we made?
Not yet. I might have. I was doing a lot of scouting, but I don't know if I caught that one specifically.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to now.
That would be one of them. But since there's a film about that, I'll use a different answer. Probably my first and actually my only bull elk that I've killed would be the most memorable, because we'd moved to Alberta. Prior to that, I grew up in Ontario, lived in Kansas, and I've always loved calling animals in, right? So whether that was ducks or turkeys or whatever, catching fish, I love the moment when there's an animal and you coerce it in whatever way to make a decision that ends up ending in very much in your favor. And it's different than kind of ambush hunting like you normally do with deer, where it's like this study of this, immense amount of information that allows you to make a wise decision that is also based off understanding an animal, but it's not, you're not sort of winning the moment, you're winning a long game. And so because of that, I knew I was going to love elk hunting. And when I moved to Alberta, there were a lot of people like, oh yeah, it'll take you a couple of years to figure it out. And, obviously I was obstinate and really thought that we could get it done right away. And I think we were like 9 days into the season and generally had hardly been able to find elk. And Alberta's got about a 5% success rate on archery elk tags, which is probably a bit of a fake number because a lot of people in Alberta just buy tags just in case kind of thing. But we were hunting public land, and we have some really good friends that, have become better friends over the years that have given us tips about where to go and how to handle things and what areas to check out. And so we're in one of those areas, and I found, I was running along bugling as much as I could and couldn't ever get an answer. And then one night I was glassing and ended up finding an elk. So they were in a spot, and I saw what I considered at that time to be the biggest elk on planet Earth. It wasn't, but it was probably the biggest one in the area at least. And it had a crazy herd of cows, which is pretty rare for our part of the world, like 20, 30 cows with it. And I was with my dad and one of kind of our mutual friends, really his dad's friend, but it's somebody I've grown up with. And they're both from out east and had never hunted the mountains before. And so it was kind of a wild adventure for the three of us. None of us really knew what was going on. I certainly had a bit of an upper hand just from the amount of research I'd done, but it was kind of uncharted territory. And so we made a plan on these things, and it actually worked. The wind came out of where it was supposed to come out of. We probably went about 5 miles in the dark. I wouldn't let them use headlamps, and everybody's falling, and those boys are up almost into their 60s and not necessarily in mountain shape, so they they were sucking wind, to say the least. And we ended up getting in the right spot and hearing a bugle. And because of my absolute obsession with calling, I'd spent months and months and months learning to elk call. And I finally had a chance to kind of get it on and have a conversation. And one of the things that you always hear is when you're moose hunting, oh, don't grunt at them and they'll run away. Or you don't want to gobble at turkeys, it'll push them off. You don't want to bugle at elk. Like, you don't bugle at them. They know a bugle when they hear it. They all run to the hills. That's always like the local old boy take on things. But I'm like, enough. I fired up the bugle, and he answered, and then I just challenged him, and challenged him again, and it happened so fast. But I'll never forget just hearing him answer and being like, man, he seems pretty rowdy. And then, oh, wow, he seems rowdy and he's closer. And then it was like, okay, he's going to explode. Like, he's just screaming. And I kind of ducked into the trees, and there was this little game trail that I kind of hoped that he would come on. And I had this tiny, tiny little, like, basketball-sized window. And, the elk ended up charging up the hill, responding to the challenge of the bugle, and then froze came over the hills about 20 yards away and sort of scanned the flat that I was standing on. And I was archery hunting and just froze. And I was like, man, he's going to turn around. Like, there's no way he's going to come up on this flat. Hopefully it's thick enough that he feels like he needs to go a little bit further to survey the scene, because I'd thrown everything at him, all the chuckles and grunts and spitballs and everything. And sure enough, he just came charged, like trotting angrily down this trail. There was like a tree that was falling, and he ducked his head under it. When he ducked his head under it, I drew my bow. And as he was trotting, I didn't even stop him. I just kind of gave him a bit of a lead, which is not highly recommended in archery circles. But picked my spot and made the shot. And it's like winning the freaking Stanley Cup. And I just couldn't believe it. I still kind of can't believe it. It was a herd bull, called him away from the cows, shot him at 11 yards. Dad and his buddy, of course, did a really good job of convincing me that I'd made a bad shot, because there wasn't an immediate outpouring of blood, because they're whitetail guys, and they're like, usually when it's good right away, and elk are a different creature. But we ended up finding him, and 6 trips later, he was back in the truck and got into the Alberta Genuine Drafts, and that was that. So I don't know if that's an adequate description, but essentially it was
captivated
kind of
me,
the odds, an Eastern boy in the West, and it was really I proved a lot to myself, and I suppose other people, but more importantly to myself, that I could take my understanding of animals that I'd accrued over the course of my life, and then count on my resilience and staying power to keep at it and attack every day like it's the scarce opportunity that it is. And in the end, it worked out. And I've been on a lot of elk hunts since then, and my fiance and I returned to that area and killed her first ever archery animal the next year, which was extremely memorable, and actually got my dad back out with a bow and a tag, and he killed his first ever archery animal when he was 60. So
damn.
We went 3 for 3 in that unit. We're in that area on the 5%. So pretty proud of that, I guess.
That's really cool, man. We'll have to chat when we start getting a little closer to planning. Not that I want to encroach an area. I won't have any type of points to get to anything good. Probably it'll be the first time, but any gotchas that you could share with us.
I'm safe in Alberta. I can tell you all the dirty details, and you won't be able to get up there because we don't have any non-resident hunting without outfitters. So.
Nice.
But I could probably point you in a few directions down south.
That's great. How do people, we'll wrap up. How do people find Rockhouse Motion? I mean, like, you're already working with a lot of big brands from the sounds of it, but is there, are there any little guys that would benefit from doing business with them? Can they even afford you guys? How can folks engage, or like, where do you want to point folks? Is it to your personal stuff, the business stuff, a little bit of both? Take your pick.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I think, if you are a film person or if you have any creative aspirations, our Vimeo is a really great spot to spend some time. That's just Google Rockhouse Motion, and I'm sure Vimeo will pop up, and there's some great, I think they're great pieces in there. And from a variety of things, right? Some of them are, we made a film at the Indy 500 last year. That was not necessarily the norm of the stuff we've talked about here, but the same principles apply, and lots of great hunting stuff on there. And then our Rockhouse Motion Instagram, we've started a series called Before Your Eyes, which is essentially a behind the scenes look at the approach that we take to doing the work that we do. That's at Rockhouse Motion on Instagram. And, you guys have been very, very kind, and the caller has been very, very kind to me personally, but the reality of what we do is it really is a team sport. I'm lucky to be in a position where I can really direct and facilitate and kind of quarterback things. But the reality is we have an incredibly talented team, and none of the things that you guys or anybody's enjoying that we do would be possible if I did it on my own. So our team is pretty vast. I'm going to just sort of, you guys can figure out the spelling, but to find them on Instagram, it would be Matt White Rockhouse, Dustin _Rockhouse, Colin Photogram, C. Lucas Clark, Naoto Aoki Photography, and then my fiance, who's also our producer at Rockhouse, and that's Logan Ray Ross. And I'm at Aaron Hitchins. So if you want to get a feel for the whole crew, that's how you do it. And I really appreciate anybody that took the time to listen, and I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks so much. What a fun topic and conversation. I mean, it was quite the adventure as I suspected it would be. Man, I guess that's it. We'll end it there. We'll end the live feed anyways, folks. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the guys that called in. We appreciate it. Super good questions. Great practical answers. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no hecklers. I'm kind of surprised.
We've had pranksters in the past, none today. When we get into hunting season, that'll get louder. But we've done a good job of screening those guys out.
Nope.
All right, thanks everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys.
We'll get this thing produced tonight.